to my J Massacre presentation of A Window to God. Just so you all are aware, there will be a talk back after the performance. There is a little survey with questions in your playbills, so you can look that over now, and there will be time after the show so you can fill that out for me and hopefully have some questions. Without further ado, I present to you A Window to God. Enjoy the show.
Religion, by definition, is any set of beliefs that informs daily living. So at that basic level, all religions are the same. However, very early on in my studies, I realized that every major religion, and some minor religions as well, vary in every possible way on their understanding of the role of God, the person of God, the attributes of God, and whether or not God even exists.
I don't like the word religion because to me it just seems so... I like the word faith more than I like the word religion. Because when I think of religion, I just think of something that's just very strict and by the books.
Religion was made by men to make people follow rules. It was just another tactic to get people to follow laws because jail wasn't a big enough threat for some people. So they needed a punishment for being amoral. So if you did something wrong, then you were punished in your afterlife. Which, if that system keeps you being a good person, then more power to you. But personally, I just don't think that's helpful to me.
Faith is so much a part of your culture and how you were raised and who you are that it brings people together, but it also separates people and makes them drift apart. It's so complex, but it's so simple.
I call myself a born-again Muslim, which means that I was born into the Islamic faith, but I wasn't practicing until I was older.
I'm a cradle Catholic, which means that I was born into a Catholic family and have been raised Catholic my entire life.
I'm a fairly new Christ follower, actually. I came to the faith about 4 years ago. Before that, I was atheist/agnostic.
I grew up in an all-black neighborhood. Most people were Christian, but we had these Muslim neighbors, and my parents were interested in their religion. So my neighbors kind of showed it to my parents, and my parents showed it to me, and then I started practicing. I wouldn't call it conversion because we didn't do it properly.
I was following my parents' religion in a ritualistic way and not realizing what I was doing. I knew in my heart that it was the right thing to do, but I didn't understand until I became a mom.
It's very important for me and my husband to pass our faith on. It's more than a belief system, it's history. It's family identity.
My parents were interested in Malcolm X because my neighbors used to talk about him and how he was a Muslim. So we went based off of those teachings, which was the Nation of Islam, a black Muslim organization. When I was younger, I had so many questions. My mom was teaching us things that our neighbors showed her, but we didn't have the full conversion process we were supposed to. Part of that was because our Muslim neighbors moved away, so we lost contact with any Muslims. So my mom was trying to improvise with what we should and shouldn't do. Eventually, she lost interest in the religion, and we did as well.
I felt lost. I hit rock bottom, personally. I moved to Texas and was in a really emotionally abusive relationship. I came back, started building myself back up, and that's when I met the guy who is now my husband. He was really into his faith, and that was the one thing we did not agree on. He started inviting me to go to church with him. I was very nervous and very put off by the whole thing.
Initially, when we quote-unquote converted to Islam, my grammar school had a huge issue with that because we wear uniforms in school. I wore the Muslim headgear and my sister wore the headscarf. They didn't like that. I remember this boy snatched my hat off, pushed me into a wall, and just started stomping on it. People were very violent, and it was terrifying at first. I remember there was a period of time where I would wear the Muslim hat that I was supposed to wear to school, wave goodbye to my mom, go into the school and just take it off. I I did that for a while, and while I was deceiving her, I was not deceiving God.
When I saw my newborn, I realized that I wanted to teach him the proper faith and teach him the why that I myself didn't know. I remember when my kids were starting religious education, we were standing in the narthex at church, and there was a bunch of people standing around talking, and this religious education coordinator said that if we don't find somebody to teach this class, we're going to have to cancel it. And I actually felt my shoulder being pushed. It was like one of those signs that was just like, go. So I volunteered, not ever having taught religious education and not even teaching my own kids.
I had to study it first before I could let him know. That's why I studied. That's when I realized the importance of why I believe what I do, so that I can teach it to my kids.
I started teaching the kids that were a year older than my son, who was in the 4th grade. I started studying, learning what I was teaching them, and I was able to follow them up to 6th grade, which is Bible study. I taught religious education all the way through when my youngest was in the 6th or 7th grade. Actually, I taught her through the 8th grade. I followed her up. So I've been teaching religious education for 8 or 9 years. It was one of the more fulfilling times in my faith because I was able to learn and grow myself and then immediately pass it on and see the kids' aha moments.
I took an Alpha class, which is a course meant to introduce people to the religion. So through conversations and learning about Jesus and what it actually meant and not what you see in the media, eventually I came to see that it was really important. Once you see that people who are really walking the walk are all just about love, it's easier to embrace the whole thing.
When I went to high school, it was diverse. I went to school on the north side, but grew up on the south side. It was so diverse, I was like, wow, there are actually Muslims here. They taught me so much more. That's part of the reason why I converted when I was in high school. Because I was like, yeah, I used to be a Muslim, and they were like, okay. And they started teaching me things, and they weren't aggressive. I had things that I didn't really agree with, but they weren't hostile. We had a beautiful civil discourse. It allowed me to be introspective and say, wow, okay, I'm gonna juggle with what I have, and eventually I decided to go on board with it.
I had a lot of people from my former life, my past, who knew my atheist, agnostic identity, and they are not so receptive. They were like, did you join a cult? Did your husband make you do this? Why are you so shiny and happy? It is kind of off-putting that they just can't accept that I'm peaceful and I love where I'm at.
I learned to get over it, and I learned to tell people that this is who I am, this is my identity, and if you have a problem with it, you can go somewhere else. From then on, my sister and I decided to embrace our identity.
It's the way I wanted my children to learn how to live. It's the way I learned by having parents of the same faith. It's hard now because they're all going their own ways. Except my older daughter. She is uber religious. She makes me look bad.
I didn't want my son to go through the life I did, just following blindly. I wanted him to understand that your family is doing this with you, your community.
It's hard for them to find their own way, but I can't force it on them.
I grew up Muslim, and I was taught the religion by my parents. I did everything a Muslim did. That was early on. As I got older, I thought, how religious am I?
I got baptized when I was really little, but like first communion and confirmation was just done through my grade school. So it's just like assumed that you did it. It wasn't until high school, and I was like, why am I doing this?
A lot of Muslim families are very strict. The religion has become a part of their identity. It's good that someone has such a strong faith. It's admirable. But at the same time, it hinders you because there are certain things that keep you subconsciously closed-minded.
I'm a Democrat, hardcore, and that's always how I've looked at myself. Every day in my religion class, people would tell me all this stuff. I mean, my religious teachers would tell me, quote, unquote, what's right and wrong. It was clearly persuasive, trying to get you to learn one side.
Things that were negative were probably because I was not a good kid. I'm going to be honest. So, there are so many things you can't do as a religious Muslim. You don't form a good relationship with your parents because you have to play the role of an American kid and a kid practicing Islam. They say they know who you are, but they only know who you are at the house. I was into girls. I never really got into the whole drug experiment phase. Not really, but, you know, like any other young man, I messed around a little bit.
I went on a pro-life march a few years in high school, which is not how I feel now. But you hear that people are killing children, and you're like, oh, well, that's bad. Then you look at it from a deeper perspective, and it's like, oh, well, these women have a right to their bodies, and they can do it if they want to. It's hard, because then people are like, oh, so you would have an abortion? And I'm like, no, I would not. I really hope that I never get to a point where I have to think about that.
I dated here and there, but my parents were dead set on finding the perfect girl to arrange me with and all that shit, right? So, the summer after college, before I went to med school, my mom had been plotting. And I'm so stupid, but she had been plotting for a couple years to set me up with this girl. And I hate to say it, but they had this preference for very tall, light skin with blue light eyes. But I just brushed it off like whatever. But then shit got real. My parents asked her mom for her hand, and I was like, oh my god, this is actually happening. I got into med school and I'm really grateful. Maybe I should just make them happy. Wrong, don't do that. Don't be a people pleaser. That whole experience happened and we ended up breaking it off because she had a boyfriend and they broke it off. I'm putting quotations around that because they were still seeing each other. And I had confided in her that I was a normal person, you know, I had girlfriends and she kind of ratted on me. My family and I thought that she did that so she wouldn't lose face. During that time, my parents found out so much that I didn't want them to know. It was such a bad experience.
A few of the girls didn't agree with the teachings, and they definitely had some issues with others for it. I mean, when we were on the pro-life march, these girls made comments about how the people in the march didn't even know or fully understand about abortion on a public post. We got in a lot of trouble afterwards. I mean, the teacher yelled at them.
All of that would have been avoided if we weren't so strict about how we had to act. I was over here playing two identities, one at the house and one at school. After that, I was like, yo, what's the point? Not only was I already teetering, should I be a Muslim, should I not? After that, I was like, man, forget this. After that, I was like, I don't think I'm Muslim anymore. You want to know something funny? My parents don't know yet. How do I think that's going to go? What do you think?
Looking back, those girls were right, technically. I mean, I bet a bunch of people there don't agree now that they understand the issue. But back then, they just went along and didn't understand.
Interesting enough, my relationship with my parents has gotten better. They understand that I'm older, they understand that they don't have to baby me anymore. They're still trying to get me to talk to girls, but rather than be so proactive about it, they're like, hey, you should talk to this girl. My mom visited a few weeks ago, and she kept trying to get me to talk to this girl, and she was like, she's a great girl, and anyone who would end up with her would be a really lucky guy. Plus, she's super religious, so she'll make you more religious. And I was like, okay. But, our relationship has kind of progressed.
It definitely wasn't until college when I really realized how I actually feel without being influenced by my parents or my teachers from religious school. That's when I realized that my parents aren't really religious. I mean, my dad is an atheist, and my mom is kind of like me, where she went to church because it's what her parents wanted. It's because of my education system that I even went to Catholic school. Because in St. Louis, the Catholic school system is just better than the public school system. It's almost like he did it just so I could get a better education and not
not feel left out. And if I was in a similar situation to that, I would absolutely do that. So, to answer your question, maybe I'll go back to Catholicism.
It's not that my church is saying that things are bad. Don't do that. It's all a choice. Growing up with 12 years of Catholic education, I thought everyone did the same things I did. So the fact that people ate meat on Fridays during Lent was weird to me. The fact that people didn't go to church every week and get communion was weird to me. It was just weird that people didn't understand the same things I did.
Islam specifically means submission to God the All-Powerful. And then the struggle is jihad. Jihad is when you overcome those obstacles to maintain your faith.
I worked with someone in the same office, and during Lent, I would say, oh, I can't eat meat. And she would say, see, I don't understand that. Why can't you eat meat? I would say, well, I can. It is a choice that I make to remind myself of the suffering of Christ. I have to defend the way I eat. I have to defend the fact that family says grace at restaurants. A lot of people think it's really weird, but it's a choice that we make.
When you choose to live for God, you're choosing to live life from an eternal perspective. That means not breaking God's laws. Not doing these things because you can, but because you love God enough to prefer His way over your own.
As a Muslim woman, I am the only one in my family who wears the scarf. I don't always wear it, but you know, once you reach a certain level of faithfulness, and you have to start to change yourself.
I wear the hijab, and I wear extremely modest dressing. I started dressing that way 10 years back, and I realized this was a step I needed to take to come closer to God. I realized everything God tells us to do is good for us. So if He told Muslim women and men to dress modestly, then that way of dressing is good for us. So about 10 years back, I made the decision to obey Him in the way I dressed.
It was my first trip to Iraq in January 2011. When you go to Iraq and Syria, you do have to be covered in what they call a baya. So you are covered in a coat, is what they really are. So I didn't wear the hijab initially here, but once I went over there and started reading about why women cover themselves, I saw why it was important. You don't have to be covered up all the time if you are around men that are okay. There are approved men, like your brother, father, brother-in-law, husband. So technically, the only time it's required is when you're out. So when I got there, I was reading and realized this is a really big deal. That was back in 2011. And my mom was like, you're not going to keep it. You love your hair too much. So people were making bets in my family, and lo and behold, they all lost. That was a decision I made without anyone's influence.
Going from dressing like everyone else in America and being a part of the crowd and having that interaction with the opposite gender and the way that they looked at me and the way that we interacted to now that I wear this outfit, most of the times I get a lot of respect for the way that I'm dressed. Right away from the opposite gender, maybe not from the women. Maybe the women kind of look at me differently, but from the men especially, I get a lot of respect. I think partly they are a little intimidated. Now, I am a Muslim woman, so I get a lot of nods, and I still get the stares, but they are respectful.
There is an immense amount of respect. People respect you for having principles, having beliefs that you stick to. I am very lucky to have my coworkers who know me. We are all girls, so if I don't want to wear a scarf, I can say, okay guys, I'm not wearing it today. And once I walk into work, they will let me know when we have a male visitor. So I feel like people respect you. If I am in an elevator, most guys will step away, which is nice that they don't get close to me.
why I see the respectful looks and I ignore the negative looks, or I don't pay attention to them, or I don't see them. But I am not an oppressed Muslim woman.
I just went on Hajj, which is the pilgrimage we all have to do once in our lifetime to Mecca, Medina. Think of Hajj as sort of a point of credibility. It gives you a very important reason to continue being a Muslim. Not that I needed an important reason to be a Muslim. It's like a really great reinforcement.
I went to conferences, retreats, and World Youth Day. Honestly, each and every one of those experiences is like a huge recharge for my faith. It's energizing, it's inspiring, it just totally revamps everything that I feel in my core. Especially when I went to World Youth Day on the summer of 2016 in Krakow, Poland.
To say a lot of people were there when I went would be a very, 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 very dramatic understatement. Every year, more and more people go to Hajj, so every year it is more and more cramped.
There was millions and millions of people there. There were people who don't even speak the same language as me and are clear across the world, and we have that common bond because of our faith and our love for God.
The first thing we do is go to a place called Mina, and it is meant to be a trial, and there is no civilization because God wants us to realize what we have. I had no Wi-Fi, barely had any clothes, didn't have much variety to eat.
The first actual World Youth Day event is that we did the Stations of the Cross. The Mass was said to have millions of people all around you. We were like sandwiched together like we were just some giant music festival. The stations were prayed traditionally, but they were spoken in different languages. And the stations were done, but they were with music and interpretive dance and theater and all these different aspects, because what we believe in is that you don't need words to believe in. And then sometimes in a lot of aspects, these words, they have different meanings and can get lost in translation.
Part of our pilgrimage is called Tawaf, which is where we circle the Kaaba counterclockwise 7 times. It's tough walking around near the Kaaba because there are so many people. You barely have any personal space. After prayer times, everybody goes back to their rooms, and the streets are filled with people. You can't even drive near the Kaaba because the streets are so full. It was nice, though, because, for example, when I first came to Milliken, I was under the impression that I was the only Muslim here. And for the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was right, until I met another Muslim, and then 2 others. And having memories of high school and being the only Muslim amidst the Paris attacks, and having to explain so much, to going to cities where my beliefs are based, and having everyone there be exactly like me, and everyone just understood each other. I didn't have to explain anything. It was a breath of relief. And I felt safe there. I felt safe to the point where I didn't even want to come back to America.
There are other World Youth Day events. So, people will go into groups and they'll take a pilgrimage. For my group specifically, we went 5 miles from the city into a field. There was a couple million people camping out. We would travel the country and visit shrines of saints and cathedrals. The teens would all get together at the pilgrimage to pray the rosary and would take turns saying and leading prayers and intentions.
There are other rituals we do. We do things like the stoning, which is where we stone the pillars meant to represent Satan as a resistance. Then we do a ritual called Sai, which basically reminds us of a story about the Prophet Muhammad and how he was ordered to leave his wife and son in the desert. And his wife put her full confidence in God and started looking for water. She began to hallucinate and ran from 2 mountains, Safa and Marwa, until God made water spring up. That water is what is now known as Zamzam, which is holy water for Muslims, and I brought some back for friends. Anyway, that's what Sai is. We run between Safa and Marwa 7 times.
My favorite experience was the vigil before morning mass with Pope Francis. The pilgrimage would take groups and would walk into different distances, and for us it was 5 miles to where there was another pilgrimage in which they were setting up sleeping bags to camp out before the vigil. There was again multi-language prayer, praise, and worship in which, the vigil would go on for hours until people fell asleep. Then Pope Francis joined us, and we all celebrated Mass together. It was amazing. Pope Francis asked everyone for a moment of silence, and I kid you not. Nobody made a sound.
For me personally, Hajj broke me down and rebuilt me. I didn't think I was going to cry while I was there, but I cried for a lot of reasons. I cried myself to sleep because I wondered why God chose me to go on this trip. I cried under the stress of just being in those conditions. I also cried out of happiness because of what God has given me. When I went on Hajj, I went as someone who didn't know how good they had it. When I came back, I was a better me. I basically came back elevated and enlightened.
Think of it. Millions of people in silence. I may have never spoken with any of those people directly, but if I were to just look at them from across a room or across a field and lock eyes and have that mutual understanding, you can feel the love without having to say anything.
Every Muslim that does Hajj basically completes Islam. We have 5 pillars. We have Shahada, which is the Arabic word for creed. Our creed says there is one God and the Prophet Muhammad is his last messenger. Second is Salah, we pray 5 times a day. Third is Zakat, show kindness and give charity. Sawn, which is Ramadan, we fast for a month. Last is Hajj. Usually Muslims aren't able to go on Hajj because of financial difficulties or something else. So me completing all 5 is a huge honor. Every single chance that I get, I am going back. I didn't really see any violent actions there like I see here. They really are cities of peace. So I will go back every chance I get, and that is a promise.
I don't care about wanting to do that. To go on Hajj and see everything. I mean, I've seen the shrine or mausoleum where the Prophet's grandson is buried. I have seen that. I have done that. I don't want to see it every day for 2 weeks because then I won't appreciate it as much. But what does make me appreciate my time on Earth are my abilities and skills to serve people through healthcare. And I was blessed to serve on this mission trip to Iraq.
Right before my senior year, I went to Africa for a month. I call it a mission trip, but I just wanted to act my faith before tackling the real world.
So there is a certain time in the Muslim calendar where the Prophet's grandson was murdered by the government. We commemorate and mourn that time. Now, during that time, a lot of people will come through a city called Karbala in Iraq. Normally we get 30 million people in the span of 10 days. And these people need health care. So a lot of doctors and volunteer organizations will take time off, collaborate, and donate medicine. They'll come through Karbala and set up trailers and satellite posts where we would be able to do a quick history physical, prescribe medications, and do a lot to relieve the small hospital there. So we serve as an outpatient center, treating complaints of sore throat, fever, vomiting, diarrhea, stuff like that. I was able to volunteer for that twice.
My pastor said most mission trips tend to be religious tourism. So find something you can do that's not just going with a group to Costa Rica building houses while hanging on the beach. So I went to an AIDS orphanage by myself in South Africa, around places with no indoor plumbing, no major housing, just cardboard boxes and tin huts.
I think the best form of worship for me is to give my time. I hate to say it, but I don't really care about praying. So, my best form of praying or worshiping is to give my time and health.
I get to see what life is like in other places. How much joy and hope they have because of a faith that's very similar to my own.
I think we've lost the community aspect of religion. We have these small Islamic centers that we take pride in, but it's almost dumb because, okay, you take pride in it, but you take it too far, you at least compartmentalize it. I can help out as the Islamic Center, and I can only help out at the Islamic Center, and having done that, I've done my service to my community.
There are smaller, everyday God moments of just seeing how pure people can be out of the goodness of their hearts to help other people.
We have to understand that there are communities within our community, or communities outside of ours that need our help. These people need our help.
You see someone help a stranger after they fall, or give someone their last $5 so they can get something to eat. That's a God moment to me.
I know that there are people like me where if I can do something to help out the community, take like-minded people and band together to help out the whole community, I think that would be awesome.
People are loving. It's not that you are Christian or Muslim. You are a human being. They're human.
Christianity has a lot to do with love thy neighbor. You're taught to love even your enemies. My faith teaches me to love others and to try and be kind and caring and to care for those around me.
We have lots of commandments from God about neighbors. I am taught that Christians are my brothers and sisters in humanity. I love them like I love any human being. I want what is best for them in this life and what is best for them in the next life.
My girlfriend is a strict Catholic, and I would say I'm pretty Muslim. We bond over it a lot, actually. I mean, the best thing about it is that even though people view Islam and Christianity as two opposing voices, we have so much. It gives us so much to bond over and grow closer with.
My boyfriend is Christian. He went to a Christian school his whole life. He had a diversity of religion class his senior year. He thought it was going to be a class about other religions besides Christianity, but he said the course was pretty much how to fight people about religion. It was like, this is what I believe in, and that's better, so I'm going to talk down to you about what you believe in. Why should you fight someone about religion and be like, what you believe is wrong? That's not what faith is about.
We were friends before we started dating, and me and my friends, we weren't talking about deep stuff. I mean, everyone was having very surface level conversations. You know, your morals and your values are what make you who you are. My girlfriend and I, every time we're talking or every time we volunteer together or do anything along those lines, we have the same mindset in that sense. I mean, it's what brought us together. It's the reason we are dating in the first place.
The first thing we realized is that our faiths are similar. Very, very, very similar. For him, religion is a little more murky. So he's open to other religions and less jazzed about his own. But whenever we have chats, it's open. It has never been a hindrance. It's been more of an, oh, so this is what you and your family do.
The biggest conflict for us right now is that we don't really know where it's going long term because we figure both of our parents would have a problem with it. I mean, the most ideal situation for a Muslim is to marry another Muslim so that you can raise Muslim families and keep the religion going strong. I know my parents want me to be happy, so I hope. But, you know, it's not something we're really worried about right now.
We've been together for 3.5 years, so we know for us religion isn't a hindrance in our relationship. Maybe that will get more complicated if we get married. And how that would work, ooh. But the things we've always said is I would never want him to ask me to convert for him, and I would never want to ask him to convert for me. We have that mutual respect that our faiths are different, but a large part is understanding that they're very similar.
from my Catholic girlfriend is that God is in a house, and religion is a window. Each window is a different perspective. I mean, all you have to do is move a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right to get a new perspective. And, each window might be tinted a little differently or might have a different shape. But at the end, you're all reaching for the same goal.
I am not the media stereotypical Christian that gets all the negative slack.
Christians get a bad rap because they're those that are very judgmental.
I am not judgmental.
Osama bin Laden is not my grandfather.
I'm not a woman hater.
I'm part of this volunteer organization called Human Library, and the concept behind Human Library is that everyone is a book and you have a story to tell. It's about having one-on-one conversations with people who have been marginalized throughout society. I got involved with it, and my book title is New Christ Follower.
Growing up, I was part of a church that was great for Bible study purposes, but I found that I was being judged by the people there. I found that it was less about the teachings of God and more about those who were acceptable to the Lord, according to the people at my church. We would go to South Carolina for a week in the summer. You could call it a retreat. We were doing a seminar with just the girls, and we come into the main room, and this woman walks up and she says, "Today we're going to be talking about something that's a little uncomfortable."
The funniest part was when I went to my first Human Library event. So everyone was kind of scared to meet me because they heard that my book title was New Christ Follower. So they were all apprehensive and they all looked at me weird as if I was going to judge them. And their whole piece is that they don't judge others, but they ended up judging me anyway. Now we're really good friends, and they have seen that I am not the media stereotypical Christian that gets all the negative slack.
So I'm totally ready, thinking we're going to be talking about sex, right? So then she surprised me and she says, "We're going to be talking about homosexuality." And I'm like, first of all, what? Second of all, why are there only girls here? And so basically she preaches to us the whole time about how gays are bad and horrible and it's a choice, and if anyone tells you differently, it is not true. I was probably 13, and I had already made up my mind that I was accepting of homosexuality. In hindsight, I probably could have just not said anything, but I think it was God telling me, you should say what you feel. And I did. I said, I have no problem with their lifestyle. I believe that everyone should live the way that they want to live. My counselor, who I had hit it off with earlier in the week, made a comment to me when we left the place. "I'm really disappointed in you. But I'm not a judgmental person."
My first official negative experience with my faith occurred during the Obama administration, the day after the Navy SEAL team assassinated Osama bin Laden. I didn't want to go to school that day. Why? Well, for some reason, little me kind of knew that wouldn't be such a great day for him.
Since a certain country wanted to corrupt their religion for their own goals, that basically affected what a lot of Americans view. Like, certain Islamic states would press the hijab on women, and girls would look at me and, kind of accuse me of not seeing women as equals.
I ended up going to school anyway. I failed at faking sick to my mom. Nice. So I went to school. But it was okay. Up until gym class in the locker room, people came up to me and called me names like terrorist and Osama bin Laden's grandson, and they would come up to me and say things like, "I'm so sorry that your grandfather was assassinated." It really made me not want to exist anymore. I remember going to the principal's office. I remember crying. I remember the cheerleaders trying to be my fake friends. all still really crystal in my memory.
Last year at Millikan, a girl asked me about the hijab. Like, why don't men wear the hijab? And I'm like, it's a modesty thing. It's only for women, and men have different goals for modesty. But the way she was asking it was so aggressive. Like, she was somehow trying to get some satisfaction of me admitting somehow that, yeah, we don't really treat women as equals. But she never got that, so she just got upset. I was upset too, because I thought things at Millikan were gonna be different, because, you know, people are older and have more knowledge, but that just proved me wrong. And it hurt me in an inexplicable way, because that's not what I believe. Islam really does believe in equality. True Muslims who practice their faith believe in equality, unity, and diversity.
As a Christian, as there are with any religion, there are extremists and therefore some conservatives that come with that closed-mindedness. You could pray the gay away, make America great again, and you'll burn in hell. And all those negative associations that come down on people like me. I would never say those things.
There are a lot of people associated with my faith that have nothing to do with what I believe in or how I live my life or the people that I surround myself with. The Catholic priest scandal is in the news again, and that's always difficult because that is not my church. And it's really hard to have people make fun of us for that and to have that hatred because of that, but it's there. It's in the public news, and the comedians are having a field day with it.
I come under prosecution and under fire. I need to stand by my beliefs. The most recent ones are the social media campaigns that have thoughts and prayers crossed out for calls of action. Sometimes that's all we can do. I may be thousands of miles away, but I could still care. I could post thoughts and prayers on my newsfeed and then be called out for being a Christian.
I don't think I've ever been discriminated or attacked, but I feel like there are times when we can't talk about it because people make fun of Catholicism or Jesus, and I let it happen. Sometimes I wish I didn't let it happen because it's important to me. I make a joke, and I wish I hadn't said that. I just don't want to offend anybody, so I refrain from talking about my faith, you know? And then they assume that I'm not a Christian, and I'll say something remotely religious, and they'll go, oh shit, she's a Christian. I can see a switch flip.
I have not personally been attacked. It's kind of bad to say this, but I'm the type of person that lays low when I should actually be saying something.
You know, it's not hard for Christians because Christians outnumber anything else. And, you know, having friends who are Muslim and having friends who are Jews, they've gone through a lot worse. And I've never been through something like that. I've seen what they've gone through, and it's just so much worse. And I've never, ever been through something like that.
I went down to Louisiana with the Muslim student organization at my university. We went down to help flood victims. We made a pit stop through Georgia or Alabama, and you know, me and 3 of my friends went to McDonald's. And we were there kind of joking around being like, oh my god, Alabama is such a weird state. And there was no malice in our jokes. I mean, we didn't say we hated Alabama. I mean, we were from Chicago, so we were like, LOL, Alabama's funny. And this old white man behind us turned to us and said, well, we don't want you guys here anyway. And I know that he was referring to us being Muslim because I was the only guy, and the 3 women with me were all wearing headscarves.
When we first moved to this house in Forsyth, I remember my dad didn't park in the garage one night, and his car was out in the street. One morning, we woke up, and it had been spray painted. It had a bomb on it, and it literally said, "Bomb Allah." It was terrible. option of taking it to the police, and we did. We took it to the police, but my dad didn't really want to continue it. I know they wanted to investigate the hate crime, but for us, it's pretty much brushing things off before they get more difficult for us.
We didn't want a confrontation either, so we just kind of ignored it, ordered our meal, and left. We were kind of taken aback. I mean, it was like we weren't welcome. We just didn't belong.
At first, I thought it was crazy. I thought it's not actually gonna happen because it just seemed so outlandish. A Muslim ban? I thought he's gonna tear families apart. I just thought it was a horrible idea.
I get into debates with them with the Muslim ban, and I try to look at things impartially. So I had figured out that Obama and previous presidents had these countries on watch before and actually wanted to ban these countries, but Trump was the one that went and actually banned them. I understand the United States has its issues with terrorism, but I don't think I could really be frustrated with his decision to ban certain countries. People are calling it a Muslim ban, but it's not like he's banning every Muslim country. Just with our previous experiences with Islamic extremism and terrorism, I kind of understand where he's coming from. When it comes down to it, you gotta protect the country. I know it's controversial, but yeah.
Throughout that whole ordeal, my whole family and I were just walking through life like zombies at that point because we had pretty much accepted that that was normal. People are going to be offended by our belief system all the time for all our life.
I just try not to be too offended, but just be logical about the whole thing.
Well, I just think it's a horrible idea.
I'm an American citizen. Some of these other Muslims are American, but the thing is they have family members in Afghanistan and Pakistan and other Islamic countries. I can put myself in their shoes, but I cannot have the same emotional response as they have.
I was born in Pakistan, but we used to live in Oman, which is under Saudi Arabia. And the capital is Muscat, and that's where we lived. It's a Muslim country, so as a Muslim, there was a call to prayer, and all religious holidays we got off. So it was very much a Muslim environment. Coming to America, we didn't get our holidays off, but between our family and extended family, we never felt out of touch. My husband is from Pakistan, and we are really waiting things out with his paperwork. Currently, the U.S. is not believing that we are really married and that he married me in good faith, and are now trying to prove his status here. They are now proving his green card, and we have been waiting for over 2.5 years. I didn't lie. I didn't cheat. This is really my husband. I mean, do people lie and cheat the system? Of course. But it's the rule followers who get stuck with the harsh punishment. So, right now, with the travel bans, it's really scary. My husband was planning on visiting his mother in Pakistan and canceled because God forbid we leave the country and the rules change and he is stuck out there. At this point, she is older and we would rather not have her travel. We would like to go travel. But with the situation, I'm totally uneasy until everything is approved for us to leave the country. Technically, could we travel? Yeah. But there's no guarantee that they would let him back in. Any law can change in time, so there's no guarantee. I am an American citizen. But if my husband is stuck, I'm stuck. So that's how it's affecting our lives. We have to think 10 times before leaving the country. As far as we have gone is Canada now because of the situation. So it's affecting our lives directly.
It was so uplifting to turn the TV on and see people protesting the ban and saying things like, "We're all Muslims now." And I was like, yes. Yes, I was so happy that happened.
I have never, ever
Islam is built off of Judaism and Christianity. It's an extension of those two religions. They are the three Abrahamic religions.
All these major religions believe in the same things. Be a good person.
Do not repay evil with evil, or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing. Because to this you were called, so you may receive a blessing.
Number one thing is respect. You may not believe the same thing, but you can respect each other for it.
Every day is
Before
going
you
to
are
be
a Muslim
struggle,
or a Christian,
but
you
still
are a
need to be
human
merciful,
being.
whether you like a person or not. Mercy is not just tolerating someone, it's accepting them for
Islam
who they
really
are.
does believe in equality. True Muslims who really practice their faith believe in equality and unity and diversity.
There are
Give it to the needy.
There are everyday God moments that I see out of the pure and goodness out of people's hearts. That's just like God moments for me.
I know there are people like me where if I can do something to help out the community, that would be awesome.
Have faith in God and praise God.
Islam specifically means submission. Submission to God, the all-powerful. And then the struggle is jihad. Jihad is those obstacles that you overcome to maintain your
You're
faith.
choosing to live life from an internal perspective. Not doing these things because you can, but because you love God.
I am not an
Your
oppressed
own
Muslim woman. Life changes when you don't get what you want, when you don't get into that school. You hit a hard place when you don't
When
get into
terrible
the person
things
you
happen,
thought
I
you
know
wanted
I
to
can
get
pray to
married
God about
When
it.
you
God's
get
will
divorced,
is God's
when you
will.
feel it's
I find
something,
peace
it's
in
about
everyday
keeping that
life,
faith.
and it helps with my anxiety, and helps me put a bow on things. So it's okay, I prayed about it, now I can push it aside and
Romans
move on.
5:1. Therefore, having been justified by faith, we have peace with God.
It's a really big aspect of this religion. When you see another Muslim, you give them the greeting of peace. I don't know if you've ever heard Assalamu alaikum, but it literally means peace be unto you.
And love each other.
The most positive experience I've had is just these communities of positive, encouraging, supportive people. You're just inspired.
You're not alone. Your family is doing this with you. Your community.
Romans 5:8. I love you in the darkest. God loves me. Even when I can't love myself, even if I
love
can't
commandments from
believe
God
that anyone
and
loves
yours.
me.
I'm
God loves
taught
me
that
abundantly.
Christians are my brothers and sisters in humanity. I love them like I love any human being.
Christianity
I want
has
the
a
best
lot
for
to
them.
do with love
the
thy
best
neighbor.
here and the best
I'm
in
taught to
myself.
love my enemies.
They are
People
human
are
beings.
scared
that
of
teaches me to
not
love
share
others
Christian
and
or Muslim.
to try and take
Jesus
care of
taught
those
us
around
to
me.
love
Scared of
God
the unknown.
unconditionally.
God
No
is
matter what
love.
they have done.
God loves everyone.
It's not the passionate love, it's the love for humanity.
You can feel the love without having to say anything.
It makes you feel like you're a part of something bigger.
It's so complex, but so simple.